Alright fuckers, Corey Margera here, and this is a video that I've been wanting to do for a while now, and it's basically a video explaining how I would reboot Batman. Now, what really inspired me to want to make this video is due to the fact that we have the new Batman Superman movie coming out next year, and I have no intentions of seeing it because I don't give a fuck. Alright, I already know that it's like, I just don't care. I just don't fucking care. You know, I just don't even give a shit. You know, Warner Brothers, DC, you know, they're fucking up Batman big time. You know, I don't give a shit about Superman. I never liked Superman. Never gave a shit about his character. Always thought he was way overpowered than he fucking should be. You know, I don't give a shit about Superman. You know, I am a Batman guy. You know, just like compared to Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman, I'm a Paul Heyman guy. You know, I want to be entertained, you know, and I'm not entertained by some goody two-shoes bullshit. You know, I like darker characters, and that's why I like Batman more. But basically, this is how I would reboot Batman. You know, because I do not like Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I think it is highly overrated. And, you know, and while I do like, you know, I like Batman 89. I don't want to say I like, you know, Tim Burton as a director or Joel Schumacher as a director. But I do like Batman 1989, and I do like Batman Forever. I think they're great Batman movies. I think, you know, Batman Forever is highly underrated. Batman 1989, though, is a complete classic. Love Jack Nicholson's Joker. Michael Keaton, he did a great job as Batman. I liked his Bruce Wayne, too. A lot of people don't like his Bruce Wayne. I personally liked Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne. I thought it was pretty fucking good. You know, but this is basically how I would, and I'm not going to tell you guys the cast who I would get to play these characters, because I don't pay attention to Hollywood like that. The only person I'm going to tell you who I would have play Batman / Bruce Wayne is Scott Adkins. You know, that's the only person I'm going to tell you, because I think Scott Adkins would be a great Batman. You know, and just for the record, I would have the Batman suit look just like this. Pretty much, you know, I like the futuristic style of it. I don't like, you know, the suit that he wears in the Dark Knight trilogy. I don't like the suit in Batman Begins or the Dark Knight. You know, I don't care for the Batman suit in those movies. I want it to go back more to like a classic, traditional Batman suit. You know, I want those cool shark things on his fucking forearms, on the gloves. You know, I want it to look, I want him to look like a badass, but at the same time, you know, I want it to look futuristic. We are in, you know, the 2010s. You know, Batman does need to look, you know, more modern, you know. But at the same time, I don't want him to look like he's just, yeah, like, I hated the cowl and the mask in the Dark Knight movies. I just hated it. I think this looks much better. You know, this is how Batman should look. You know, I would basically make the suit look just like this. And for the record, I wouldn't go too deep into the origin story because I know nobody wants to see that. Everyone's already seen the origin story. I would just have flashbacks of Thomas and Martha getting shot. You know, and I would... And here's another thing that I would do. I would have Joe Chill be the Joker. Alright, I would have Joe Chill be the Joker. Kind of like in Batman 1989, where Jack Nicholson played Jack Napier and he was the killer of Batman's parents. I would have Joe Chill be the Joker. I would have him be the Red Hood. And this is how okay, let me explain to you guys how I would do the first movie. The first movie would kind of be like a homage to Batman 1989. You know, it would start off with the Joker, and the Joker would make a return in the sequel, but the trilogy is not going to be based on the Joker. The Joker is going to make an appearance in this movie, and he is going to have appearances in a few of the sequels. But the first movie is going to be basically about him, because he is one of Batman's ultimate foes. He's one of Batman's greatest enemies. And, he's my personal favorite Batman villain of all time, just due to his charismatic, hilarious, dark comedy approach. He's just a sick motherfucker. He's always blowing up shit and trying to cause chaos in Gotham. He's just a real funny villain. He's just a sick bastard. And I would make the Joker look like this. I would have him look like an actual clown. But I would kind of give him that lipstick makeup from The Dark Knight and, Batman Arkham Asylum, the games. That sick lipstick that he wears, where it's just, it's just a mess, just to make him look a little crazier, a little edgier, But at the same time, I want him to be classy. I don't want him to be like Heath Ledger's Joker, which he was just a complete mess. He looked like a mess. I want the Joker to have class. I grew up with Batman the Animated Series, and I grew up with Batman 1989, and I do want the Joker to have class. I do want him to still wear his suits, his purple suits. I want him to be a character, if that makes any sense. I want him to, still, look like the Joker. But at the same time, I do want to give him an edge to him. Because I do think that, we're in different times now. And, we need to be a little more edgier. We've seen a lot of shit. And I think that, right now, you need to make an edgy Joker. Now, I'll be honest with you. This film is basically going to be an origin story for the Joker more than it is for Batman. Because, and I don't want to hear people say, now I am going to have somewhat of an origin story for Batman, but it's basically going to be Batman coming back, from overseas, when he was training in martial arts, and he's pretty much going to develop his martial arts. I'm going to give him a few scenes where, Batman, Bruce Wayne is, he's going to come back home to Gotham, but he's really going to, he's really going to start to train a little more. He's going to, start, doing martial arts a lot more. He's really going to get intense. He's going to get serious. He's even going to have moments where he tries to forget about his parents' death because, he wants to live a normal life until, he hits that dark place where he realizes that he can't. I think that would make a much more interesting backstory for Bruce Wayne. He tries to lead a normal life. He tries to, get over his parents' death. He tries, and he tries really hard. He even asks Alfred for advice. But the fact of the matter is he can't. He's a very depressed, bitter, cynical. He's got problems. He's pissed off. He can't take it anymore. He's about to have a nervous breakdown. And that's how he decides to become Batman. I think that would be a much more, instead of this heroic justice shit, that all this goody two-shoes crap that they tried to feed us in Batman Begins with, he wants to stand up for justice. And no, I want Batman to be a dark character. I don't want him to be justice, goody two-shoes bullshit. No, I want Batman, to actually be a fucking dark character like he's supposed to be. I want him to, get depressed, have anxiety. I even want him to have thoughts of committing suicide. I want this to be a very, very dark character. And I also want him to actually show off his martial arts skills. Because I find that to be very annoying that, with the exception of Batman Forever, a little bit of Batman Returns, you get to see him fight a little bit in the beginning when he's fighting the Penguin's clowns and stuff. But I really want to see Batman kick some ass. And what better way than to have the fight choreography from the Raid Redemption? I feel this is one of my favorite martial arts movies of all time. I love the Raid Redemption. And I feel that, this style of fight choreography, first of all, I want to see martial arts films make a comeback. But especially with this movie, with my version of Batman, I want Batman to be a legit martial artist. You know, I want him to kick ass. You know, I want him to be like a legitimate, you know, I want him to have some of the best fight scenes. If you've seen this movie, then you know what I'm talking about. But I want him to have some of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in an action film. You know, I want Batman to be like legit. I want him to be like a bitter, depressed, angry person. You know, kind of like how he is in Batman the Animated Series. You know, I want him to have thoughts about committing suicide. You know, I want him to try to get over his parents' death, you know, just to realize that he can't. You know, and that's going to be Bruce Wayne's backstory. It's not going to be like Batman Begins where, you know, we tried to tell the entire fucking thing in 2 hours and nah, I didn't like that. But this, like I said before, this movie is going to focus much more on, you know, the Joker's origin and backstory. And pretty much he's going to be Joe Chill. Joe Chill, it's going to kind of be like Batman 89, like I said before. Joe Chill is going to be the Red Hood. That's what's going to happen. Joe Chill is going to be the Red Hood. You know, he's going to, after he kills, and here's the thing, too. This is what's going to make it really interesting. After Joe Chill kills Batman's parents, you know, this is his first murder. You know, he wanted to be a stand-up comic. You know, this is his first actual murder. You know, and after he kills Batman's parents, he's going to start putting on the Red Hood because he's going to try to hide his identity. You know, and it's going to take some elements from The Killing Joke. So for any of you who've ever read The Killing Joke, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, go check it out. It's a great book. It's a great comic book. The Killing Joke is one of my favorite Batman stories of all time. You know, and I just think that, you know, we really need, you know, Joe Chill in a Batman movie, you know, turning into the Joker. I like that premise. You know, I really like that fucking premise. I think that it's cool. I think that it, you know, it just makes it just, you know, how can I say this? You know, like it's interesting, you know, because Joe Chill was not a popular character in the comics. You know, he's only known for killing Bruce Wayne's parents. So, you know, why have him just be there? You know, why have him just be there as the murderer of Bruce Wayne's parents? You know, I want to see, you know, more character development. So, yeah, I would have Joe Chill be the Joker, and he would go under the name Joe Chill. That's his alias, and then he goes under the Red Hood. And then, like in Batman 89, you know, Batman kicks his ass and knocks him into a vat of chemicals, the green acid, which bleaches his skin white. You know, he starts wearing lipstick. He's, you know, his hair turns green. You know, that kind of stuff. That, you know, that's exactly, you know, what I want in, you know, the first movie. You know, I want it to be an origin story of the Joker. I want it to take elements of, you know, Batman 89 as well as The Killing Joke. You know, and that's what I really love about, you know, Batman 89 and The Killing Joke, because we do get to see a glimpse of, you know, the Joker's history. So, you know, that's just one thing I would do. Now, you know, and he would be the main villain. Now, in the sequel, I would have Joker make a return, and I would also have Harley Quinn be in the movie. So the first two movies are going to be basically based off the Joker. And I don't care if people disagree with that, because Joker's one of the best villains of all time. It's like saying, you know, Stone Cold didn't deserve to win 3 Royal Rumbles. Yes, he did. He's one of the biggest draws in WWE history. He deserved to win the Royal Rumble 3 times. I don't care if he buried people that sucked like The Big Show or Rikishi or anybody else that was never going to be a big star in the business. You know, the Joker is a big fucking deal in the Batman universe. And what better way than to have him make a return in the sequel? Joker's back. And this time he has a partner, Harley Quinn. And we actually get to see Harley Quinn's origin story. You know, she's, you know, the beginning of the second movie will Joker's in Arkham Asylum after the first movie, because that's basically going to be the first movie. I'm not going to go too much into detail of the first movie. It's basically just going to be an origin story of the Joker and Bruce Wayne, Batman, but it's not going to focus too much on Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's going to focus more on the Joker. And the second movie is going to be an origin story for Harley Quinn. And again, like the first movie, it's going to have raid redemption type fight scenes, and Batman, he's also going to start to improve. You're going to see him take out criminals, just petty criminals and stuff like that. You're going to see more of that. You're also going to see it in the first movie, but you're going to see it in the second movie as well. And you're going to see the Joker escape from Arkham Asylum, because Gotham is a little safer again, kind of like in the end of the first movie where Commissioner Gordon was like, Gotham has earned the rest from crime, but if crime ever happens again, call him. And they give him the signal. Well, that's kind of going to be like like this. It's kind of going to be like that. Gotham is going to, crime is going to drop because Batman, people trust Batman, people believe in Batman again. Because in the first movie, and that's another thing, Batman's not going to be liked in the first movie. He's going to get criticized. He's going to have a lot of critics, from the news media to CNN to all these other liberal and conservative networks, radio personalities. They're all going to criticize. Larry King's going to criticize Batman. I'm going to have it so, people are criticizing Batman. So people, are like, should we trust Batman? Should we believe in Batman? And then by the time this movie starts, Batman is going to earn, the citizens of Gotham's trust. And, again, Harleen Quinzel is going to have her origin story in this movie. And it's basically going to talk about how, Harleen Quinzel, she worked for Arkham Asylum. And, how, she instead of her being like a real, instead of having her be real professional, I'm kind of gonna, make her kind of look a little ditzier, because it just makes no sense and this is one thing I was just kind of like weirded about in the animated series. She goes from being, a highly respected, psychiatrist into a ditzy, crazy, annoying accent having chick. It's just like you go from it's like too bipolar. To me, it was too bipolar. I kind of want to have Harleen Quinzel be a little ditzy, even as a psychiatrist. Kind of being like more down to earth instead of serious. But and like in the animated series, she's gonna have her reservations about the Joker. She's not gonna know what to think about him at first, and then she's gonna eventually fall for him. And that's basically, she's gonna help Joker escape from Arkham, and Joker's gonna start blowing up hospitals, and I'm gonna have him do some really edgy stuff that's really gonna push Batman to the edge, to the point where he thinks he needs to kill the Joker, and that's basically where the movie's going to take off from there. That's pretty much going to be the second movie, Joker's revenge, pretty much. He's going to try to take over Gotham, and that's basically how it's going to go. He's going to try to destroy it, and it's going to be for a huge laugh. That's basically what it's going to be. And then, and then there's going to be an epic fight scene between both Batman and the Joker. There's going to be a really epic fight scene where Batman pretty much destroys the Joker. He doesn't kill him, but he beats the shit out of him, and he breaks his legs. He puts him in a body cast, pretty much. He breaks his arms. He breaks his knees. he like literally almost paralyzes the Joker. You know, Batman is gonna lose it. He's gonna paralyze the Joker. You know, he's not gonna kill him, but he's gonna severely paralyze the Joker to the point where he's gonna be sent off to Arkham Asylum. Harley Quinn, she's gonna be sent off to Arkham Asylum as well. You know, and that's gonna be the end of the second movie. Now, the third movie is gonna be a real good one because, you know, and this is going to be a real good one because I'm a huge fan of this character. The third movie, and also keep in mind, Harvey Dent is going to be in the first and the second movie as a district attorney, not as Two-Face, but as a regular Harvey Dent, a district attorney. And then in the third movie, I'm going to have Slade Wilson make his appearance in the franchise as Deathstroke, because I'm a huge Slade Wilson fan. I'm a huge Deathstroke fan. And then I'm going to have basically Slade Wilson, you know, just go on a crime spree. He's basically going to be going on missions and stuff like that, killing people. It's going to be a lot of real intense shit. You know, Deathstroke is just one of my favorite characters. You know, I'm a huge mark for Deathstroke. Slade Wilson, you know, he's just a legit badass, man. He doesn't fuck around. And you know, Batman's got to stop him. Like right from the beginning of the movie, you're going to see Deathstroke just like kicking ass and killing people and shit. You know. But here's the thing. I'm also going to have Andrea Beaumont make her debut in this movie. Actually, she's going to make her debut in the second movie. She's going to be Bruce Wayne's love interest. But in this movie, we're going to see the debut of this character as well. Yes, that's right. The Phantasm. This character is going to make his long-awaited debut. And the thing is, I'm going to tease you guys that it's Andrea Beaumont, but it's not. Alright? Kind of for anybody who's ever seen Batman Mask of the Phantasm, I'm going to tease everybody that it's Andrea Beaumont, but it's not going to be Andrea Beaumont. It's actually going to be somebody else. No, it's not going to be the Joker. It's not going to be... It's going to be somebody else. And you'll find out who it is if, you know. But it's not going to be Andrea Beaumont. But there's going to be signals in the movie that make you think that it's Andrea Beaumont, because you're going to see her exit scenes when the Phantasm is going to make his appearance, and it's going to lead the viewers to think that, you know, the Phantasm is Andrea Beaumont, like in Batman Mask of the Phantasm. But it's not going to be Andrea Beaumont. So who's it going to be? Who's going to be the Phantasm? Well, I'm not going to tell you guys yet, because it's going to be a real shocking twist. It's going to be a real shocking twist who the Phantasm actually is. But basically, I'm not going to put too many spoilers in my idea, but Deathstroke and Phantasm are going to be the main villains in the third movie. You're going to see an origin story of Slade Wilson too, but it's not going to be like a long origin story. It's just, you know, it's going to show you, you know, what type of villain he is, get you to, you know, just to give you an idea of what Slade Wilson is all about. But for the Phantasm, I definitely, you know, I want this character to be creepy. I want this character to be scary. I almost want it to be like a horror movie when this character makes his or her appearance. And I'm not going to tell you who it is. Because if I ever get an opportunity to make a Batman movie, I want everyone to be shocked who the Phantasm is. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket and tell you who it is. But just know you'll be shocked. Just know you'll be shocked when you find out who the Phantasm is. That's all you need to know. And just know that it's going to be a great movie, too. It's going to have a lot of really cool fight scenes. It's going to blend that. It's really going to push. It's probably going to be close to rated R. As a matter of fact, all the Batman movies in my trilogy are going to be rated R. Because we're really going to push the envelope. But yeah, that's going to be basically the third movie. You know. And the fourth movie. Well, actually, and one more other thing that's going to happen in the third movie. Harvey Dent's going to have his accident. Harvey Dent is going to turn into Two-Face in this movie. But he's not going to be a major villain. Because it's going to be toward the end of the movie where Batman is trying to save Harvey Dent. And then they send him to the hospital, and basically it's going to leave like a cliffhanger. So that, yeah, you know Two-Face is going to be in the next movie. But, yeah, that's basically what this movie is going to be. You know, Bruce Wayne's going to have a love interest, Andrea Beaumont. You know, he's going to think about quitting being Batman. That's another thing that's going to be a big deal about this movie. He's going to think quitting Batman. Because, first of all, people are turning against Batman. They think that the Phantasm is Batman, kind of like in Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And, you know, the citizens of Gotham are starting to turn their back on Batman. You know, even Commissioner Gordon is starting to question him. He's like, did you kill these people? Was that really you? And then, you know, it's going to lead to a lot of tension. And it's going to lead to a lot of, you know, it's going to be an intense fucking ride. You know, it's going to be a fucking intense ride. But basically, you know, Bruce Wayne's going to have second doubts. He's going to talk with Alfred. He's going to talk with Andrea Beaumont. And, you know, he's going to really think about quitting being Batman. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And for the fourth movie is basically going to be, like I said, it's going to be Two-Face. Two-Face is going to be the main. Two-Face and Mr. Freeze are going to be the main characters of this movie. Because I feel that, you know, this movie is really going to show how tragic these villains are. You know, Harvey Dent, once Gotham's district attorney, you know, becomes, you know, horribly scarred, disfigured, turns into Two-Face. You know, he goes crazy. You know, you know, and I'm going to have this version of Two-Face be very similar to the one in The Dark Knight. And that's one thing I did like about The Dark Knight, was that I thought Two-Face was very well portrayed. I thought Aaron Eckhart did a great job. And, you know, he's basically going to be the same character in this movie. He's going to be like, you know, and that's another thing too. There's going to be another love interest for Harvey Dent who dies. It's going to be Andrea Beaumont's friend, but you'll find out if I ever get an opportunity to make the movie. But that's basically, yeah. And she's going to die. It's kind of going to be like the Rachel Dawes storyline where she died and Harvey Dent blames Batman. He blames everybody for not getting to her in time. And, you know, he starts... That's basically going to be how Two-Face... I'm going to keep it just like that. Because I thought that was perfect. I thought that the way Harvey Dent became Two-Face in The Dark Knight was a great idea. I thought it was perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. And I would actually incorporate that into my movie. And also... And that's another thing, too. Because Mr. Freeze... He's actually going to form an alliance with Two-Face because he knows what happened. You know, and Two-Face and Mr. Freeze are actually going to form an alliance. And kind of like Batman Forever, Two-Face is going to flip his coin. He was like, why should I team up with some fucking snowman like you? And he's going to be like, you know what? we did both lose people we loved, you know, and because Mr. Freeze, his wife Nora is dying, so she's recovering from a severe disease. It's not going to be McGregor syndrome. It's going to be like a different form of cancer that she's trying to recover from, but or some other disease. It's not going to be McGregor syndrome like in Batman and Robin, though. It's not going to be that. But she is going to be recovering. Mr. Freeze is going to be trying to find a cure. Victor Freeze, he's going to be trying to find a cure, and Victor Freeze and Harvey Dent are basically going to team up and try to take out as many people as possible. But they're not gonna, Two-Face, even though he's gonna try to kill Batman, their goal isn't to kill Batman. Their goal is to actually kill their enemies, because that's Slade Wilson is actually Two-Face is gonna try to get revenge on Slade Wilson, because he's gonna be one of the reasons why Two-Face becomes horribly disfigured in the third movie. And Mr. Freeze, he's gonna try to get this he's basically gonna try to get revenge on this motherfucker who's gonna be based off the character in Batman the Animated Series, who basically killed Victor Freeze because he wasn't paying them enough money to use their equipment, and Victor Freeze is gonna try to get revenge on him. So that's basically how this film is going to play out. They're not initially, neither Two-Face nor Mr. Freeze are going to go after Batman. They're going to cause havoc in the city, but they're going to try to get revenge on, the people that wronged them. They're not going to be like, oh, I want to kill Batman. I want Batman dead. Batman, he's basically going to have to be, and this is where you're going to see Batman's detective skills come into place, because he's going to basically be doing a lot of research, and he's going to find out who Victor Freeze is after and why he's trying to kill him and blah, 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 blah. But that's basically going to be the fourth movie. Okay? And now the fifth and final movie, and neither Two-Face or Harvey Dent are going to die. They're both going to go to Arkham Asylum. And that's going to be the end of the fourth movie. But at the same time, Harvey Dent and Two-Face are going to get their revenge. Slade Wilson is going to almost die, and Victor Freeze is going to kill this guy who tried to take away his equipment in order for him to find a cure for his wife. And that's going to be the end of the fourth movie. Now, the fifth movie is going to be really fucking special, in my opinion, because it's going to really take a villain that I thought has been botched to fucking death, and it's gonna finally do him justice, because I did not like his portrayal in Batman and Robin, and I did not like his portrayal in The Dark Knight Rises. And I think you know who I'm talking about. That's right. I'm gonna have this character finally done right. In the beginning of the fifth movie, Batman is going to, really reconsider being Batman, after the events of the previous movies. He's really going to think about calling it quits, but at the same time, he's addicted to it. He can't stop being Batman. Even though he wants to quit being Batman, he can't stop being Batman, But basically, Batman is gonna really meet his match with Bane. Which is Bane. And we're gonna kind of have an origin story for Bane too. Bane is actually going to be, a former wrestler. And this is one of the origin stories that I'm going to change up, because I'm not really a big fan of Bane's origin story. But Bane is going to be a former professional wrestler, and we're kind of going to give him that Chris Benoit treatment. Like, he's erased from the record books because he ended up killing his wife and son. But he's not going to be a white guy. He's going to be, He's going to be a Mexican descent, but he's not going to have an accent. He's not going to have an accent. He's not going to speak like a stereotypical Latino person. He's going to speak like a normal American human being. He's going to speak like a normal person, but he is of Mexican descent. And he's a former wrestler. And he got erased from the record books. Basically, I'm going to change his origin story because his wife is going to be an abuser. And that's what's going to lead him to end up killing his wife. His wife is a bitch. She's a skank. You know, she's just a real bitch. You'll see. In the movie, you'll see. And that's going to force Bane to want to kill her. And then his son finds out. And his son tries to run, and Bane accidentally kills his son. Now, this is really this may offend quite a few people, especially, people for or against Chris Benoit, but I really want to make this movie edgy, and I really want to make it mean something. And I really feel like this is a great storyline for Bane. Now, granted, we are going to take inspiration from Nightfall. We are going to take a lot of inspiration from Nightfall. Bane is going to break Batman's back. He's going to be a very, very smart guy. Bane is going to be very, very smart. He's basically going to outwit Batman even at certain points in the movie. But basically, I want him to be a very tragic character. I want him to be a very and he's going to find out about this new steroid called Venom. That's basically how he's going to become so big. He's going to take a steroid known as Venom. And he's going to overdose on it. And that's how he's basically going to become Bane. He basically, at first, because Bane, he moves to Gotham. He tries to get out of the spotlight because all these events happen in Mexico. So people in America, Gotham, don't really know about it. They hear about it. Wrestling fans know about it. But, normal people don't really know about it that much. So Bane, he escapes to Gotham. He tries to, he's on the run. He's trying to, rob banks and steal money and shit like that. And then, he finds Batman, and he's like, wow, this is a worthy adversary. And then you see Bane and Batman go at it. And basically, yeah, it's going to lead to Bane and Batman having some really great fight scenes. Unlike The Dark Knight Rises, which the fight scenes were shit. But basically, Bane is going to end up breaking Batman's back. And Batman, he's just going to feel real depressed. He's going to feel like he's never found true love. He's going to regret being Batman. He's just really going to be real bitter and cynical in this movie. He's really going to, fucking almost have a nervous breakdown. Like he did in the first movie. But, it's just going to make him crazier and crazier. And then he's going to, have no other alternative but to, go back to being Batman and taking out Bane. He's gonna have to take him out. He has no other choice. He's basically gonna say that, Alfred, I have no other choice. And I'm not gonna, like I said before, that's basically gonna be the fifth movie. But like I said before, I'm not gonna get into detail on who I'm gonna cast as who, because like I said, I don't pay attention to Hollywood. But I will get Scott Adkins to play the role of Batman / Bruce Wayne. I have to get Scott Adkins. Because I really feel, and the thing is, at first, if you watch the Undisputed movies, Boyka, he does a great job. But if you watch the Ninja movies, if you see Scott Adkins in those, that's exactly the Scott Adkins that I want to see as Bruce Wayne. He's very, down to earth. He's very clever. If you ever seen the Ninja movies, that's a perfect example of Scott Adkins, the Scott Adkins that I want to see as Bruce Wayne. Except he is going to be much more bitter and depressed. But that's the only casting choice I would call right now. I think Scott Adkins would be a perfect Bruce Wayne, a perfect Batman. You know, he's a good-looking guy, good-looking white guy, you know, no homo. But I think he would play the role of Bruce Wayne perfectly. I think he would be a great Batman, too. You know, I think with, you know, if he just darkens his voice a little bit, sounds a little tougher, you know, not like what fucking Christian Bale did. Oh, God, no. Fuck that. But, you know, just enough to, how can I say it? You know, make him sound much more intimidating. But yeah, guys, that's basically how I would reboot Batman. Those are my 5 films in the series. One more other thing I want to mention: I would not have Robin in any of these movies. I am not really. I like Robin. Don't get me wrong. I like Robin, but I do not think Robin would really. He would lighten up the mood in a lot of these movies, and I don't want the mood to be lightened. I want this to be a very dark trilogy. I want it to be a very, you know, dark and, you know, intense trilogy. And I don't want Robin to be in it, because Robin, he basically lightens up Batman. You know, he lightens it up. You know, once you put Robin in it, and the thing is, you know, I'm a Robin fan. I like Rob. I like Dick Grayson. I liked how in the comics, I liked in the animated series, you know, how he stood up to Batman and became Nightwing. He's basically like, fuck Batman, I'm gonna do my own shit. But I just don't want it in my trilogy. You know, nothing against Robin, nothing against anyone who's portrayed him. Jason Todd, nothing against, you know, Tim Drake, you know, even Damian Wayne. But I just want this to be more about Batman. You know, I don't want it to be. And again, this movie is gonna have like a lot of these movies are gonna have a lot of characters, and I want each character to play a real vital role. You know, I don't want too many characters. You know, I don't want it to, you know, I want each character to actually do something and have their portrayal in the films mean something. So I don't want, you know, like, just to add another character, just to add Robin and add, you know, it's just, you know, I like Robin. I'm not one of those fans who hates Robin. I like Robin. But I just want this to be a very darker, different approach to Batman. Even though Batman's already dark, but I want this to be even more dark. Like, I want it to really push that envelope. And I just don't see Robin. He would just lighten the mood up a little bit too much. You know, but that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? How would you reboot Batman? You know, what are some of your ideas? What would you do? Leave it in the comments. Rate, comment, subscribe. And on that note, I am done. Later.